This episode is brought to you by BeWaterSmart.info. Is your yard summer strong? A summer strong yard is tough enough to take the heat and still look its best. Here's 2 ways to help. First, replace your thirsty lawn with native and low water use plants and install drip irrigation and high efficiency rotor sprinklers. You'll use less water and have a healthier, happier yard. Second, here's how to help your trees grow strong enough to handle the summer heat. First, check the soil with a moisture meter or screwdriver to see if it's dry. If you need a water, set up a soaker hose or drip irrigation at the outer edges of the tree's branches. Water your trees at least once a month. Find more helpful tips and videos at bewatersmart.info.
Look at that plant. I want you to know that everything was grown in my garden. Don't touch that plant!
Is it poisonous?
She'll become part of the plant.
Hi, everyone. Welcome to Flower Power Garden Hour. I'm your host, Marlene, and tonight we're going to talk about succulents, more specifically how you want to convert, or if you want to convert your lawn into a succulent garden, or you just want to incorporate succulents into your garden, how to do that so they survive. And with me is Gianluca, and you probably remember him from previous episodes on succulents. And he is actually he was a student worker at the Botanical Conservatory, but now he is officially a coworker at the conservatory. And I still get to tell him what to do, though. So thanks, Gianluca, for joining me.
Thank you for having me.
And thank you for making us margaritas.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
My pleasure.
I guess I'll limit myself to 1. Yeah. Okay. So as I mentioned before, background about you, you've been gardening, not really even gardening. I say I've been gardening. You've been growing plants and more specifically succulents since you were 6 years old.
Yeah.
Which is crazy. And so you were an expert. You go give talks, you've been published, and you manage all of our succulents, which are pretty rare because you know what you're doing. But your house in Davis, when you moved in, had a standard front lawn. And of course, you were like, no, I can't have this. So you converted it to a succulent garden.
Yes.
And then at the conservatory, we also had a large collection of columnar cacti that you told me, if we get as much rain as we did this past winter, they're going to die. They can't be in pots anymore. So you had us pot them out. So let's start with your front lawn. And what were the steps you did it to convert it into a succulent garden? So start with how it was, what your steps were, what you planted, and how you maintain it.
Okay.
And I'll just sit back and drink my margarita.
So, first of all, what I turned my front lawn into is not in any way reminiscent of a lawn anymore. It's
Correct.
A succulent garden with xeriscaped with rocks, mounds. Really, I like the aesthetic, but if you want something that's to replace a lawn and still kind of look like a lawn.
Oh, this isn't it. No. And
Yeah.
We should say, as I mentioned before, this is Zone 9, Central California. We had a huge amount of rain this last winter, but we're still a drought state. We're still a Mediterranean zone where we get no summer irrigation. There's a lot of people in California, and no matter how much rain we get, water's always going to be an issue. So taking out your lawn, which is, quote, thirsty for water, is probably beneficial if you don't have a lot of kids.
Yeah.
Or any kids that are going to roll around on it.
Yeah.
So did you have lawn there before?
Yes. So there was lawn in the front yard. I ripped it out.
So you did remove it.
Yes.
How did you remove it?
Just with a pickaxe.
Okay, so you just literally took a pickaxe and just chopped into it to remove
because I needed to
pieces.
dig out the soil anyways, because there was just hard clay
Okay.
in the front yard. And succulents do not like hard clay.
Okay.
They like really well draining soil, sandy loam, rocky material, granite soils, sandstone soils, things like that.
So I will say that, I've talked about, and I've had people on with converting your lawn into non-lawn but plants, and that's not necessarily what you have to do for, say, certain just leafy flowering plants. But for succulents, it's key not to have the clay.
Exactly. If you want a thriving xeric garden, you need to have really well draining soil.
Okay.
So I dug down about a foot, the entire thing, And then I put in a mix of sandy loam and lava sand. Now, I don't recommend using lava as an amendment if it's in a pot, because it can become somewhat toxic. There's lots of metals in red scoria, red lava sand. But in the ground, it works great because it doesn't clump together like decomposed granite into like a concrete type mixture. At least the decomposed granite they sell at most rock yards has a binder agent added to it because they use it for compacting pathways.
Okay, so I wanted to talk about the lava sand and what you just said. So the lava sand is, someone might just hear lava and think the lava rock. It's not lava rock.
No, it's this crushed lava rock that's literally like sand.
Or they also call it lava fines.
Lava fines, yeah.
And I think rock yards are getting more, it's more common for them to have it.
Yes.
But then other people, I know people have asked me, decomposed granite, DG.
If you can find really high quality decomposed granite, it works great.
Okay.
Right now, CL Smith, it's a rock yard in Woodlands.
Mm-hmm.
They have this really great stuff they call Mocha DG.
Mocha DG.
Yeah.
Okay.
And I've never seen it anywhere else. They just recently started carrying it again. And it's clean, nice decomposed granite with no binder added to it. That you can just plant things in. I've started using lots of it and everything.
And I'm guessing they put the binder in it because most people use DG as pathways and
Yes,
covers,
exactly.
right? It's like, oh,
It's
you
a
want to do.
compacting
Okay.
material. So they add a binder to it so that it binds into basically a solid concrete like.
So if someone
surface.
was thinking, oh, I want to use decomposed granite in my soil as an amendment, they should ask, does this have a binding agent? And most people aren't going to know.
Most
They're not
people
going to know
aren't
that.
even gonna know. No, it's
Rock yards aren't even going to know.
no. Even rock yards won't know. The only way to tell is really from experience, trial and error. The texture, you can usually feel it.
Okay, I was going to say, did you feel
yeah,
it?
when it's wet, if it has a binder to it,
Uh-huh.
it will really clump up like clay.
Okay.
If it doesn't have the binder in it, it'll just still fall apart even when it's wet.
Okay.
It-
But the lava fines is guaranteed
The
that it's
lava
going to be
fines
fine.
will always work, and a lot of places keep it or are starting to stock it. It's pretty cheap
Okay.
and it's great for drainage.
Okay.
I personally used about 75% lava fines and 25% sandy loam.
So the sandy loam, because that's sort of just when you go to a rock yard. Did you ask for sandy loam?
It's basically topsoil.
Okay, so it is topsoil,
Yeah.
but a lot of times topsoil could be more clay.
Yeah, you have to ask
You have to go
what
and
type
see
of
it.
topsoil they have.
Yeah. Okay.
But more, I also planted really rare stuff in my front yard
Uh-huh.
that needs extremely well draining soil.
Okay.
For what most people would plant,
Yeah.
could get away with less lava sand or slightly less well draining media. Not clay, like
Yeah.
full on clay, but
So you remove
know.
the grass.
Yeah.
You completely remove that just because you needed to remove some of the soil
yeah, about a foot
below the grass.
below the ground. Yeah.
Okay. And you got rid of that. And then you brought in 75% of the lava fines. And then you brought in some good sandy loam.
Yeah.
And then you mix that together. And did you mix that, incorporate it into the existing soil?
No, I just mixed it on top. But on the
Okay.
bottom, before I dumped it,
Uh-huh.
I tilled the soil to try to break it up.
Okay.
Because you don't want to have what can happen if you leave, especially clay,
Uh-huh.
you get a water basin type effect where the top soil will be well draining, but then the bottom section won't drain at all, and it will become two striated layers
Yeah.
that can actually trap water and act like a pool.
Yeah.
So you need to make sure you
How'd you
scrape it
till?
up.
Did you scrape it, or how'd you till that up?
with a pickaxe.
Okay, so with a pickaxe. People are thinking, oh, rototiller, have to go in and rototill. And
well, you
rototilling,
could. It would be way easier.
I don't even know if you've ever rototilled clay soil.
I don't
yeah.
know.
Yeah. Okay.
I've never used a
pickaxe.
rototiller.
Just
I always
basic.
just use a pickaxe.
Okay, just pickaxe. So your lawn, because I mean your yard, it's sloping. It was sloping. It had a slope. But now when I see it, it's really raised up as well.
Yes. So I mounded it pretty high. The highest mound is actually 5 feet.
Yeah, it's
tall.
really tall.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's, aesthetic preference.
Okay.
I like it because it increases your surface area to plant on, and it also increases drainage.
Yeah.
So, the really high points are going to drain really fast, while the lower points stay more wet. And if you're like me and have all sorts of weird plants that you really don't want to rot, you can put them at the top of the mound and have them be safer. You can also create, I think it looks more natural if you have mounding and landscapes and hillsides.
Mm-hmm.
and then you can put rocks in the mounds and sort of section off areas for different plants to grow in between rocks and things, make it look like an actual rock landscape.
So the 5-foot hill, I don't even remember what plants you had on top of there, but there's no way the roots of that plant is going to make it down to the natural soil.
Probably. They
Possibly?
might. Yeah.
Wow. Okay.
A lot of things can have pretty deep roots, especially aloes.
Okay.
Aloes can actually have really deep roots.
Okay.
But at that point, it doesn't matter, because if you do get torrential rains and, the clay is saturated with water, sure, maybe the roots will rot that have reached down there, but there's still like 5 foot of root above it.
So it's the majority of the roots are not going to rot. And that's
the
key right there, is you don't want them.
You don't want the base of the plant sitting
got
in.
it. Okay.
A lot of xeric plants have, or sort of my mentor, the owner of Cactus Jungle, Hap, used to say, succulents aren't emotionally involved with their root systems.
Until they rot, and then they are.
As long as the base of the plant is fine, they'll often just abscise their roots. So under really intense heat, a lot of succulents, when they go dormant, they actually just drop all their roots. The roots die.
That's crazy.
Aloes, for instance, at least the South African ones, and I'm guessing the Madagascar ones and all the other ones, the South African ones at least is what I'll use. In the winter, they grow new roots, and in the summer, their entire root system actually dies.
Wow.
And then they regrow it every year.
Okay, so actually I'm going to pivot a bit, and we talked about this briefly at work, and I didn't read anything on it. I just saw it, that Arizona has been getting record temperatures. I think 30 degrees over 110 or over 115, and the cacti.
Yeah, the saguaros are collapsing. Yeah.
So what's going on there?
So succulents, cacti, they, first of all, they're cam plants. So they photosynthesize, do the light-dependent reactions during the day, and then do light-independent reactions at night, which means gas exchange at night. So they take in water at night. The thing that triggers that is about a 20-degree temperature difference. So they will not actually even open their stomata unless temperatures drop into the, 80s, 70s.
Yeah, if you're talking 115 degrees.
Yeah. So if you have consistent heat for a really long time with no night drop, they will just not open their stomata. Also, when temperatures get way too high, same stress response, cacti drop their roots when it's too cold and when it's too hot. And of course, you can't take up any water if you don't have any roots. So these long extended periods of time, even if they get water, they're not going to take any of it up because it's just too hot for them to do it. The cacti, not very many people know this, but they're technically one of the fastest growing plants in the world, just because they can regrow their entire root system within hours.
Interesting. Holy crap.
Yeah.
Wow. I can't do anything within hours.
Yeah.
Except for drink margaritas, maybe.
They're fibrous root system.
Yeah.
So if you ever unpot a cactus, you might realize that they seem like they don't have very many roots if you unpot them when they're dry. And it's because they have their holdfast roots, or their, large fibrous roots to cling into the soil. But then their fibrous roots, every time the pot dries up, their fibrous root system dies.
Yeah.
And then they regrow it every time you water it.
That's insane.
Yeah.
Yeah. So they must be very fiberous, because
they're very fine. They're
very
fine.
Like
single cell,
like truly hair roots.
Yeah,
like little hair roots. Because when you take everyone's seen it. Oh yeah, these are fibrous roots.
Yeah.
But those are not even the fine ones you're talking about. Yeah. They're just incredibly thin.
Yeah.
So most likely is they're not adapted to temperatures that high for that long. They're shedding their roots. The temperature difference between day and night is not occurring, allow them to properly photosynthesize. And between those two things, they're just dying off.
Yeah, that's my guess. You see it all the time when things are too hot for too long.
And so I just saw a picture that the Phoenix Botanic Garden has black cloth covering, looks like their barrel cactus. I guess trying to prevent sunburn.
Trying to prevent sunburn, keep daytime temperatures from frying the plant.
Yeah, I guess I would think they would do like a shade structure over it, but I guess it's easier just to put the black plastic over during the day and they take it off at night to allow that airflow. That's just crazy. So, okay, going back to your yard, I just wanted to touch upon that because that's something that's happening now, sadly. When did you, so after you did the whole entire soil amending, you got your mound, went really high. And when did you do your planting?
Spring.
Spring.
Yeah,
Okay.
spring's a really good time to plant a lot of succulents. Not too hot yet, where they're going to be stressed from heat, especially here in Davis. And then it's not so cold that you're worried about, oh, if I disturb these roots, are they going to be able to actually regrow and heal without rotting?
Mm-hmm.
You can also do it in fall. Depends on the plant. Like for winter growers, winter growing succulents, I like to plant them in fall because they're coming out of dormancy.
Mm-hmm.
You always like to transplant your plant as it's coming out of dormancy into the new growing season.
Okay. So you just planted them, and obviously you didn't, people are always into amending the whole, but for this, you amended the whole entire area, so you didn't amend it. Now with succulents, did you water it in right away?
No.
No.
You wait about a week.
Yeah. And so basically it's because when you transplant, you cause damage. And for succulents, they're so full of moisture anyways, that if there is a pathogen that attacks it, they're so full of water that the bacteria is just going to have a heyday. Is that it? Or what's the deal behind that?
Pretty much.
Okay.
The idea is that once they have very succulent tissue, lots of water, really easy for something to get in there and start spreading.
Okay.
So you want them to be able to callus over before you water them in.
Okay.
They also tend to grow better when they experience water stress.
Okay.
So,
little bit.
Yeah, a little bit. Well,
yeah.
with some, a lot.
Okay.
Like cacti,
Uh-huh.
I get the best growth if you let them go completely bone dry between waterings and you have really extreme temperature differences during the day and night. So like above 100 during the day, drops to below 70, and it's been bone dry, and I haven't watered them in like a week and a half, and then I water them. And by the way, I say week and a half, I grow things in almost pure pumice, so that's enough to totally go bone dry.
Okay.
And on those days that you get that great, they will just explode with growth. Like you can see within a few days, they will rapidly grow and then stop.
So that's because they could put a root system on incredibly fast, then take up the nutrients in the water? Or do you...
Yeah, and then the temperature differential day and night basically triggers them to photosynthesize like rapidly.
Okay.
So they do a lot of gas exchange. And also if they're really dry, they have a higher water potential difference between if they've already dried out a bit, their cells aren't turgid, so they can take up more water, more nutrients in that time period.
Okay. They're so complex.
Succulents like stress.
They do and they don't. You added water and they just went crazy. So that shows me that they like to get out of stress.
Yeah, but they
can handle it.
That's
why people think, oh, succulents are great, I don't need to water them, but that's not true.
Yeah, but the other thing is they're not like, you can't just keep them wet all the time and have them grow. They literally need stress to grow. Like they
got it.
Yeah.
Okay.
You can't have a cactus and water it every other day and expect it to grow faster. There's some leafy succulents where you can sort of do that with, where you just give them a whole bunch of water and then they'll convert from doing CAM to regular photosynthesis and just grow.
So we do have plants like that. You know, we have the Dendrocekius, the cucumber tree, the Dorstinia, it's in the fig family, and those it will stay evergreen and somewhat grow.
Yes.
With constant water.
They tend not to be long-term very healthy if you do that.
Exactly.
But you can pump them.
Yes. Okay. Yeah. So switching over to, so we had this area outside of the conservatory that was already amended with the red lava fines. We didn't remove any of the soil. We kept the clay soil and we just added red lava fines.
Oh, wait, before we go to that, I just want to mention that if you're doing a succulent garden here in California, Mediterranean climate, best types of plants to plant in your succulent garden are South African.
Okay.
plants.
Yeah, we were going to
'cause-
go back. We were
Okay.
going to go back to your plants, but I was just talking about like timing.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. We'll go back. We'll talk about specific plants
Okay.
and stuff. So the garden, and there's no irrigation in there. And you came to me and said, we have all these columnar cacti, meaning upright, like quintessential cacti, right?
Yeah.
Just the tall ones. And they're in pots. And we had a lot of rain this year. And you're like, they're not going to make it. And I'm like, why do we have them here? No one sees these. These would be beautiful in the ground. And so we scouted out an area that was supposed to be a Mediterranean garden, but there's no irrigation in it. And we're like, well, this is perfect. Full sun, already red lava mixed into the existing clay. No soil was removed. So we just added red lava fines and raised it slightly. And you planted them out with the help of people. And you kept saying, hey, we need to do it. We need to do it before the heat comes. So even though they're cacti, you still don't want to plant them in
When
the
it's
blaze
super hot.
when it's super hot, like any plant. And so we planted them. Nice thing is, I mean, you do need to dig a hole, but the root balls aren't that big. They really aren't that big.
No. Well, that's also because that's the real reason we need to plant them out. They were in the tiny, tiny pots that hadn't been transplanted forever.
Yeah.
And
They
we
were
just
losing.
we didn't have room either to transplant them into the pots. that
No,
you
and
need.
why should I mean? And then
Exactly,
they
yeah.
didn't look as good
No.
out there, and so I'm surprised because you said, okay, we're gonna let them sit for a bit, just get them adjusted, and then I'm gonna water them in. And I literally thought you were gonna water them once or twice. You've been out there watering more than I thought.
Yeah, because they don't have any established root systems.
Okay.
So I'm trying to get their root systems to establish. Hopefully in the fall when we get some of our first rains, when it's
Mhm.
still a little bit warm, and then also in the spring, they will fully root out.
Okay.
Because basically roots follow water,
Yeah.
right? So they're not going to go down into the depths of the soil if the soil is just dry to reach, deep water
Yeah.
stores. So they need to root out first. They need to basically get established this first year. So I've been watering them about once a week.
Once a week for how long are you running it's the sort of the oscillating sprinkler?
An hour.
An hour. Okay. Just with heavy lava fines in it. So it's really good draining soil. But for an hour, once a week, they were planted in May. Do we plant them in May?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So you're still doing that and then you're going to continue that through the whole summer or
Yes.
until the winter rains come?
This summer I'm going to do
Okay.
this entire summer.
Okay.
Then once it gets cold again, I'll stop.
Uh-huh.
And then hopefully next summer they'll be established.
Yeah. Okay. So a lot of people will say, well, I'm going to plant cacti in my yard and they don't like summer water. So why should I even amend the soil?
Well, they love summer water. They just don't. All cacti are from summer rainfall regions, except for a few from Baja, California, and a little bit of the native Californian cacti. But even then, they're almost all from monsoon weather seasons.
Interesting. Okay.
But a lot of them can survive our dry summers because they can put out really deep roots.
Mm-hmm.
And then also they just store a lot of water.
Yeah.
So they can basically take up all the water from the winter rain and then use it in the summer.
But it's the standing rain in the winter.
Yes.
That's the problem. So
That's the
people are like,
problem.
well, I'm planting them in the summer and they won't take it. And then people just think, oh, the rain is the rain. But that's actually the problem.
Yeah.
Is that it's too much.
It's too much in the winter.
And it will just rot their roots.
Yeah.
And so even though they're able to shed their roots, they don't want to shed them when it's rotted.
Well, yeah. So they can shed their fibrous roots or
Uh-huh.
small roots, but their main
Okay.
root system, their holdfast roots, or what I
Yeah.
like to call it, even though I don't think that's actually the correct term for these.
We'll just go with it.
Yeah. They can't shed those. So
Yeah.
if an infection starts in or they rot, that can spread.
Yeah. So if people are growing them in a pot, so say people, okay, have the cacti. And okay, so let's go back to some of the plants that you have because we're talking about cacti and then, of course, succulents because that's sort of used interchangeably. And what I say is all cacti are succulents, but not all succulents are cacti.
Yes, very true.
And so there's a whole bunch of differing types of succulents. And name some of the plants and talk about some of the plants that. So the garden that we put in the conservatory is strictly Well, it's not because we have put some aloes in there.
No, agaves.
Agaves. That's right. We haven't put aloes. Yeah, we have
I
aloes
want
in
it to
there.
be all American
All American.
in
Yes.
that
Okay.
area. So
America.
we have cacti, agaves.
And what else do we have? I
What
think
else did
that's
I
it
put
so
out there?
far.
Yeah, that's all.
That's
I put out
it.
there.
Yeah, we'll expand, but so far it's all the America plants,
Yes.
succulents. But at your house,
I have all South African.
all South African.
Yeah.
Okay.
They are so anything from southern South Africa
Okay.
is Mediterranean.
Yes.
So winter growing.
Okay. Yes.
Basically,
And that's our winter.
it's other side of the
Yes.
globe, opposite hemisphere. So
Mhm.
technically, their winter is our summer, but that doesn't
Yes.
really matter because
Yes.
they still get rain when it's cold
Uh-huh.
and dry when it's hot. Right.
Okay. Yes.
Same as here.
Same.
And the plants obviously adjust to our hemisphere when they're grown
Exactly.
here. So they're adapted to wet winters. Great for growing here. Sorry.
Oh, is that a call? Is that a phone call? Do you need to take that? Is
No,
it a fan?
No.
Okay.
Where was I? Oh, yeah.
It might have been your mom.
The winter growers,
Uh-huh.
they're great for here because
Uh-huh.
anything from like Cape Town, the Western Cape of South Africa, they can also take the cold that we get.
Yeah. Yeah.
Light frost, occasional hard freeze. They can handle it. A lot of the euphorbias from there are extremely tolerant of cold and wet conditions,
Okay.
although they sort of have a reputation of being rot prone.
Yeah.
I find they're not. As long
Probably
as
with
you-
the good drainage.
with good drainage.
With good drainage.
And also, I think a lot of people that find that they're rot prone,
Uh-huh.
I think it's actually because they grow them in the summer with a lot of water, keep them way too wet in the summer, and their roots all rot off.
Okay.
And then winter comes and they're already kind of sickly.
Yeah.
And,
and
then the
then
entire
that's-
plant
yeah.
dies.
Yeah.
And people are like, oh no, it rotted because it got watered in
Yeah.
winter. And then it sort of self-perpetuates this weird myth that they are.
Well, that's a
rot
lot of
prone.
times that like ceanothus, I'll just say, like a lot of California native plants will die in the summer or spring. And people will think, oh, I haven't watered it enough. But it's in fact, it was all that winter rain over years weakened it. And then all of a sudden it just shows its death
Yeah.
in spring or summer. And they think it's, oh, because I didn't water enough in the spring or summer. So
Yeah.
it's the same thing. It's the stress accumulates
Yeah.
or happens beforehand and it just dies.
Yeah.
You have pelargoniums?
Yeah. I have a
So
few.
yeah. So they're South African, true pelargoniums, geraniums. And they're
succulent,
yeah.
geraniaceae, tons of different types. There's a lot of tuberous ones that go totally dormant in
Mhm.
the summer, drop all their leaves. A lot of other interesting ones with strange succulent stems, caudiciform ones,
Yeah.
and grow a lot of different pelargoniums. I love pelargoniums.
Yeah. And I'll just say no fertilizer. Or do you fertilize?
It's sort of optional.
Okay.
They
Would you-
really
they-
don't need
They don't really need it.
that much.
Okay.
They can handle pretty low nutrient environments.
Okay.
Of course, fertilizer is going to help.
Yeah.
In the spring for my in-ground garden, just sprinkle this Yaramilla. I don't know. It's one of the it's the same stuff we use for the calcium nitrate, but they have a complete version of their
Okay.
fertilizer.
Okay.
And you just sprinkle it over the thing. It's used for tilling in agricultural fields.
Got it.
So they
Okay.
spread it and
Okay.
till it in
Okay.
with water, it dissolves
Okay.
into the soil.
Okay. And that's just like once maybe in spring,
Yeah.
if that. Okay. Because most people also like the fact that they're succulents. Oh, I don't need to fertilize them.
Yeah.
And you don't need to, but like anything, it's if you have a low nutrient soil like you do, that's the thing is you're creating a low nutrient soil.
Yeah.
And you just don't want to over fertilize them.
Yeah. The succulents, they can handle tons of fertilizer if you want to grow them fast. More fertilizer, they'll take it up and they'll grow faster.
Uh-huh. Okay.
I've never heard of a plant or a succulent burning from too much fertilizer
Okay.
because, well, they're adapted to mineral soils, so they can handle tons of salts and ions in the water.
Yeah.
Really hard water, they're fine with most. Not leafy succulents like echeverias and things. Those Those are sensitive
They're
to a lot of things.
Yeah,
'cause
there's a lot of things like
yeah.
sun.
sun.
Yeah. I was actually going to talk about that. So coming out of this winter, I got a lot of pictures of cacti, true cacti, sent to me of their cacti just yellow. And they were in the pot or in the ground. And what is the yellow? I imagine it's just cold mixed with they're not uptaking nitrogen.
Yeah. So it's no nitrogen uptake. They've probably been in those pots for a really long time.
Mm-hmm.
And then all the water, their root system's probably completely rotted off.
Got it.
And then when it's actually time for them to grow, they can't take up anything.
Yeah.
And so they turn yellow.
But is it sort of normal for some cacti to turn yellow in the winter, or no? Should they
Not
never?
yellow. They should never turn
They should
yellow.
never turn yellow. So what's the number one thing during the winter if they turn yellow?
They can turn yellow. It's just probably means their roots have all rotted off.
Okay. Because we cover our cacti
Yes.
in pots,
Yes.
but we're not going to do that outside.
No. Because once they're in the ground, columnar cacti, a lot of columnar cacti and barrel cacti can handle being in the ground.
Okay.
As long as they get good sun, they're not, like covered by trees and
Okay.
shaded all the time.
And the drainage is good.
And the drainage is good.
But then when you put them in a pot
When you put it in a pot,
and you inundate it with rain.
inundate it with rain, don't have a very large root system.
Yes.
It's really the size of the root system,
Okay.
right? It's
Okay.
going to, some roots are going to die in the winter.
Okay.
But if the plant is large and healthy and established in the ground with a big root system, has a lot more reserves to sort of hold on through the winter.
Okay. Do they almost go, quote, dormant in winter?
Oh, totally. They don't grow at all.
They don't grow at all. That's
No.
what I thought.
Yeah.
Okay.
I actually like to say that you're not really keeping the plants. Cacti,
Uh-huh.
if they survive outside in California in the winter, they're not really growing through the winter. It's just, can you keep them from dying long enough until it's summer again?
There you go. Wow, what a positive thing.
That's really the idea.
Okay. Yeah.
And with a
okay.
lot of columars
Yeah.
and barrel cacti, the answer is almost always yes.
Yeah. Well, I think it's hard for people because you see a deciduous tree when it goes dormant. You're like, oh, it's dormant. It's not doing anything. For cacti, there's no real change. So
There's
people
just no
think,
growth.
yeah, so there's no growth. And you have this thing in a pot. And so really most cacti, and, I don't want to say, succulents, because, that opens up a whole can of worms. But if you're growing cacti, they should not be inundated with winter rain if they're in a pot. Is that
Yes.
correct?
I actually, so for my own collection, I had this hoop house last winter that
Mhm.
got destroyed.
Yeah, we know it happened New Year's Eve. That's Joe's
Yep.
and my excitement. I was in my pajamas at like 9 p.m. I was all ready for the new year to change with me asleep. And I get this. Actually, I ignored your phone call. And then I got a phone call then Joe got a phone call from a friend. And then you called me back. I'm like, I better answer it. And I'm like, I know he's not out partying. I know that. No, my hoop house, my cacti. And then I'm like, I have to go out on New Year's Eve.
Yeah. So I brought them all into my garage.
Yeah, we brought them
Yes.
all into your garage.
Yes, we brought them into my garage
Uh-huh.
where they sat
Uh-huh.
until spring.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah, like April.
Yeah.
I just kept them in my garage all the way until April.
Watering them or no?
No. I literally just let them in my garage. No water,
No sun?
no sun,
Wow.
nothing.
Okay.
They're truly dormant.
Yeah.
When a cactus is dormant because it's too cold,
It's dormant.
it's dormant. It's not growing. It doesn't need light. It doesn't need anything. It's not changing.
Unbelievable.
And you don't even have to worry about like adjusting them back to brighter lights
Yeah.
when the time comes because they
Uh-huh.
haven't grown that entire time.
Yeah.
They literally just are stagnant. And
Yeah.
you can just take them as soon as it's spring again, put them back out where
Wow.
they were before, and
It's fine.
it's fine.
Wow.
It's like pressing a pause button on.
And so you moved them in April, so that wasn't so bad. But what if you moved them in June? What about sunburn? Would they be then not adapted to that sun?
They would have probably started growing in your garage by then.
Wow. Okay.
And then etiolated, and you would see them because
Wow.
it's temperature
Okay.
dependent. So
Okay.
as soon as the temperatures start getting, above like 70s, 80s
Okay.
in the daytime,
Uh-huh.
80s, I would say.
Are they affected by any day length or just temperature?
As far as I'm aware, it's just temperature.
It's just temperature.
Because you can have really warm, like occasionally we'll get like a really warm spell
Uh-huh.
in November
Yeah.
or like
Yeah.
January or
Mhm.
something,
Mm-hmm.
and they'll start growing.
Interesting.
Like in that 1 week, if you have 1 week that's like consistently over
Yeah.
70,
yeah.
they'll just start growing.
Huh.
And then it gets cold again and they stop.
Yeah. I'm trying to think of like, I mean, day length is usually a flowering thing,
Yes.
or with bulbs, a bolting thing because they're bulbs. But yeah, and I think you're, I mean, I'm not saying, I'm trying to think of like, when certain fruit trees will start flowering. It has nothing to do with day length. We'll just get these weird warm spells and they'll flower.
Yeah.
So I guess things that aren't,
And
yeah.
like cacti, they're stress-induced flowers.
Yeah.
So the drier, more stressed they get. Like all of my cacti, a lot of them that I have undercover,
Uh-huh.
I don't start watering until like April, May, when it really starts to warm up again.
Okay. And those are the ones in pots and covers.
Yeah, in pots. They're
Okay.
all covered. These are also pretty rare things like Areocarpus and geophytic.
So they
weird
go
little
under cover
cacti.
as soon as rain starts
They
before.
never get any rain. They're always under cover.
They never.
technically.
Okay. All
'Cause
right.
I just have a patio with a big
Just because if
polycarbonate
they get
panel.
rain when you. Well, I remember when you were talking to your mom and she said, "Oh, we decided to help you out and water some of your cacti or succulents, and you
Oh.
lost your."
Well, no, that
Shit.
was. It had gotten a little bit warm,
Uh-huh.
and my
In
parents
Marin.
in
So a little
Marin-
bit warm means like 75.
Yeah, in Marin, in like February
Mm-hmm.
2 years ago. So my gardener or my parents' gardeners decided to water
Mm-hmm.
the covered succulent garden I still had at my parents'
Mhm.
house, and of course it got cold again like
Mhm.
2 weeks later,
Mm-hmm.
and I come home to visit my parents to a garden of a whole bunch of really rare dead succulents that had rotted out that I've been growing for years.
It was the thought that counts. They thought they were doing a good
Well,
thing.
it was their gardeners, not my parents.
Yeah.
My parents didn't really know.
Yeah.
But
So what happened there was it was cold, it got a little warm, and like most people would think a leafy plant, especially in a pot, needs water. But with what happened there, why did they not take it?
because they weren't actually growing yet.
Okay.
It hadn't been warm enough for long enough.
It hadn't
for them
been
to
warm
start
enough
growing.
long enough for them to
Yeah,
grow.
So you really want to wait until it's really actually warm.
Okay.
Like it's full on spring, winter's over,
Okay.
you can start watering again. And even then, start watering lightly.
Okay.
Or maybe do one really thorough watering if there's a day that's, especially warm. If you notice them start to grow. Because usually they'll tell you when they're trying to grow.
Okay.
Like they will start to actually do things.
Yeah.
Like what I was going to say is that a lot of my cacti and even my euphorbias, when it's time for them to get water again, when it's been warm enough
Uh-huh.
that I know they want water, they'll start to flower before I've even watered them for the year.
Interesting.
So they're super dry.
Mm-hmm.
They've literally, I don't grow very many columnar cacti.
Mhm.
I grow all these geophytic cacti. They've flattened out to little pancakes because I
Okay.
haven't watered them for months,
Wow.
like 6 months. And they'll put out a flower.
Yeah.
I'm like, oh, it's warm enough. Your metabolism has started up again.
Oh, that's nice. How do I sign on for that?
Your metabolism is
Ugh.
alive again. So I'll water you.
Oh, great.
And that's what I do. Once
Okay.
I see, a few of my cacti start to
Uh-huh.
bloom, I'm like, okay, it's time to water the entire collection. At least once.
Okay.
And I just do that.
And you water till water comes out the bottom.
Yeah.
Okay.
I water them thoroughly
Mm-hmm.
once. And then I wait. Just sort of watch. If they really start to grow, I water them more.
Okay.
By more, I mean like a week or two, or since it's still cold, usually
Mhm.
like 3 weeks later, I'll water them again. If they don't really start to grow, they just sort of put on that one flower and then like stop. I won't water them for a little while
Interesting. And what if it's very young? What age can cacti? They can flower at a very young age.
Some can, really tiny.
Yeah, really tiny. But if they're younger, what do you sort of just
Well,
would
with
water at the
columnar-
same time?
Columnar cacti, a lot of the cacti that you're going to get in stores aren't going to be nearly as sensitive as some of the ones I grow. Like
Okay.
if you water them at the
Yeah,
wrong time
yeah,
of
yeah.
year, they're not going to instantly turn into a pile of mush.
Okay. Yeah.
there's some leeway to it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I get questions a lot. This was once again coming out of this winter is, they were yellow, but there also might be like black spots. And I tell people, as long as it's firm, don't cut it off. But the black spot is mushy, then cut below it until you see a clear center, because then that somehow has gotten mush in it.
Yeah. So it depends on like how big the black spot is.
Yes.
So a lot of cacti, columnar cacti, will get these water spots.
Okay.
And it's really just a mold that grows on the epidermis of the plants.
Yeah.
Very superficial damage. Leave it alone. It's not going to hurt the plant.
Yes.
Sort of looks ugly,
Yeah.
but they'll grow
It's almost
out
like
of
a fungal leaf spot.
Yeah,
almost.
exactly. If that brown spot starts to spread
Yeah.
and is squishy,
Squishy.
I like to say first thing to do is probably getting way too much water.
Yeah.
Right?
Mhm.
So bring it in, let it dry.
Mm-hmm.
Well, first cut out the brown.
Cut out the brown.
Often with cacti, the tissue that's dyed
Mhm.
is so soft you can just use your fingers and dig it out.
So you're saying core it out.
Yeah,
Don't even cut that section out. Core it out.
What I do with a lot of these things
Uh-huh.
is I'll just dig out the rot
Yeah.
until I get to hard tissue.
Interesting.
And then what I'll do is I will basically cover it with sulfur powder.
Okay. Yeah.
That hole.
Okay.
And then leave it somewhere to dry.
So you're almost like doing removing like when I had like the basal cell carcinoma on my face, they just dug that out.
Yeah.
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 I said like that. So, okay. Cause I usually tell people we'll cut that section off.
Yeah.
But
well,
you're
if
saying,
it's an entire section, like,
yeah.
So there are two types of fungal rot that
Mhm.
occurs. There are extracellular fungal rots that sort of just go around the cells
Yeah.
and don't actually penetrate the cell membranes, and they're usually not systemic. There are ones that are intracellular where the hyphae actually penetrate the cells, and those can spread rapidly through the
Yeah.
vascular system of the plant. And you can usually tell if your plant has one or the other. Like fusarium wilt
Yeah.
is actually a huge problem with cacti.
Is it really?
Yeah, that's what causes.
Okay.
If
I
you
know
have
it
a
on tomatoes.
if you have a cactus that
Uh-huh.
just suddenly falls over, or a succulent that just suddenly falls over, and it looks like it's
Rotted.
like the entire base is just mush
Okay.
overnight,
Yeah.
practically. That's a fusarium wilt
Interesting.
in a
Okay.
succulent.
Yeah. Yeah.
Then, chop it,
And then look down the center.
and then look down the center, and if there's any brown
Yeah.
or at all, keep cutting until
Yeah.
you get to clean tissue.
And you want to use a smooth blade because serrated causes, or do you use serrated?
So with cacti, columnar cacti,
uh-huh.
depends on how old the tissue is. So
Oh.
if it's new tissue,
Yeah.
I'll use a clean, sharp kitchen knife.
Okay. Like a straight blade.
Yeah, but usually need a big thing because
Yeah.
it's big columnar cactus. If it's older tissue, cacti have wood in them.
Yeah, they
So
get
they're
woody.
woody.
Yeah. So that's if they have
So-
it almost looks like bark on the outside.
No, the inside,
Inside.
they have a
Oh, yeah, that
the
pith.
cactus wood, the
Yeah,
pith.
the pith,
It's
yeah.
actual wood. It is
Okay, interesting.
um
Okay.
true, secondary
Yeah,
growth
yeah.
wood. And the easiest way to do that is with a hacksaw. So really fine tooth.
Fine tooth.
So
Okay.
minimal damage to
Yeah.
the soft tissue,
Yeah.
but you can hack all you want at the woody parts, and you'll actually damage it more because you'll crack the wood if you try to use a straight
Yeah, yeah.
blade,
Okay.
and it can crack, up the stem. So you really do need to saw the woody tissue,
Okay.
but only once it becomes woody, once it starts doing secondary growth.
And that's how do you know? Until you cut into
You
it.
sort of just get a feel.
Okay. I was going to say you get a feel for it. I guess if you cut into it with a straight blade and then you hit something
and you hit
firm,
something, you're like,
then you know it's got
okay,
that. Yeah.
that's
yeah,
woody
yeah,
tissue.
Yeah.
because it will just cut
Yeah.
right through.
But I like your idea of just digging out the mush and then
Yeah.
coating it with sulfur dust. And hopefully that, and then of course stop watering it.
Yeah.
Because most likely it's from overwatering in the wintertime with the cold temperatures.
I would
Uh,
even recommend, if you really want to save this cactus,
Mm-hmm.
bring
Well,
it in your
that's-
garage or in your house
And that's it.
and just let it, put it next to your heat vent
Okay.
and just really dry it out.
Wow.
Not for a whole bunch of time, because then it will, if it's too warm for too long, it will start to grow again.
Okay.
But put it in a place where it
Maybe
will
garage.
really dry,
Mm-hmm.
and then put it in your garage
Okay.
where it's
Yeah.
dry, but also cold.
And so when people want to transplant out of a pot, should they do it when it's actively growing or when temperatures warm up or when it's stressed?
Spring,
Just spring.
late spring, early
Like
summer.
April, May, June?
May, June,
Okay.
I would say,
All
are
right.
good times.
Because it's you want to do it while it's somewhat actively growing?
When it's growing.
Okay.
But the thing is, there's always a balance, right? With slow growing plants or relatively slow growing plants, if you transplant them when they're in like peak active growth,
Yeah.
you can stunt their growth because you interrupt their
Got
root
it.
systems and
Okay.
things, and you can basically stop their growth for the year.
Okay.
That's more of an issue with the type of things that I grow.
You're
like
fancier.
Yeah.
More rare stuff.
especially when you're trying to grow them, as fast as you
Yes.
possibly can to like win competitions and things. You don't want to interrupt their growing period because that could be a
plant
whole
competitions.
season
I wanted to
of
do
growth.
documentaries on that. Mockumentaries, plant competitions. Okay, so go a little bit. Oh my God, I'm going to open a can of worms here. Potting soil. We have so many different. You're going crazy with. So I was going to have you on. I'm going to have you on later when we talk about your trip to.
Socotra.
Yes. Which most people are like, what? That's why I was too. Off the island of Yema, North
Yemen.
What'd I say?
Yema.
Yemen. There we go. Off the island, off of Africa. And, they're known for these plants that we grow, Dorstinia.
Dorstinia gigas.
And
Dendrocicios.
cucumber tree, and all these plants with codexes, which is that swollen base that you're just obsessed with. And when you came back, you were just like so excited. You're like, we went to the rock yard, and it was a hot day. It wasn't incredibly hot, but it was still a rock yard. And we forgot a shovel. And for some reason, we didn't ask for a shovel, but you made me fill buckets up of. So we're using our hands to scoop like limestone chunks, shell chunks. And you're like, I need 3 buckets of this, 3 buckets of that, 4 of this, 5 of that. Because you're like, I'm going to grow these plants exactly where they were growing on the cliff sides. So with that said, I don't want to go into that.
After we've gone into that.
But I want to give people the basic breakdown of what a good succulent mix for their succulents, columnar cacti, regular cacti, because you go to the store, and I'm sure we've talked about this in the episode that we did with cacti, or succulents, I'm sure we did, is that most succulent mixes are crap.
Yes.
So we make our own, and you revamped ours about a year ago, 2 years ago.
2 years ago at this point.
And I don't even remember. I'm sure you know the breakdown of it. Go through what our recipe for succulents is and what you do for things that even need better drainage.
Well, at this point, what we use for succulents is just what we use for everything.
Pretty
It's our
much,
standard
yeah.
mix.
Yeah.
And it is 75% pumice.
75% pumice.
Yes.
Wow.
75% pumice, 10% coconut coir.
Yes. Instead of peat moss.
We're
using the coconut coir.
Coconut coir. Peat moss is terrible if you're growing something that needs to dry out,
Yes.
because peat moss becomes extremely hydrophobic and it's impossible to re-wet.
And I know a lot of people are moving to coconut coir because peat moss is not sustainably harvested. And actually, I think they've outlawed it in the UK or something, which is weird because I think they get most of the peat bogs they get some of them from Scotland.
Yeah.
But so coconut coir. Okay, so 75% pumice.
75% pumice, 10% coconut coir, 10% red lava. Rock.
We're still doing the red lava rock. Small rock.
Small rock, yeah.
1/8, right?
Yeah.
Why are we doing that?
It doesn't break down as fast as pumice.
Okay. All right.
The real answer is you could probably get I'll just keep going with our mix.
Yes,
And
okay.
then 5% decomposed granite. So very low organics.
Without the binding agent, ideally. But we don't know that.
We don't. It's
But
just
with
5%.
5%, so it's
really
not
low.
going to
Yeah.
matter so much. Okay.
The idea is it helps break up the coir, so there's not just like chunks
Yes.
of organics.
Okay.
You don't want to use actual sand. I think we talked about this last time, but
Mhm.
actual sand
Mhm.
holds water. It's not actually really
It's very
good
heavy.
for drainage.
No, it's not at all.
Yeah. And it's all about the texture of the particles.
Mhm. Exactly. Not
Yeah.
molding together into
Yeah.
cement.
So with my succulents, I then cut that in half again with more pumice.
Oh my God. It's ridiculous.
Lots of pumice. I basically grow things in pure pumice.
Pure pumice. Yeah.
The only thing I like to say, for some reason, I've experimented for a long time with different soil recipes and growing plants, like I said, since I was 6.
Yeah, because you're so old now, so it's been forever.
You know. More than 15 years at this point.
Yeah.
And gone through a lot of different iterations of soil mixes. And the thing I keep finding is that, more pumice, more drainage, less organics.
Yeah.
Plants grow better and rot less.
Yes.
But if I go pure pumice, because I'm like, well, at this point,
pure pumice.
Why not just do pure pumice? Everything just stops growing.
In pure pumice?
Yeah. You need something else. And I don't know exactly why. The only thing I can think of is that pure pumice doesn't have a high enough ion exchange capacity.
Yeah.
Like in the soil.
Yeah.
Or in the media.
And so this is with fertilizing as well.
With fertilizing
so this
in
is
the water.
not. So most people are probably screaming, "Well, it's the fertilizer," but we fertigate.
Yeah, we fertigate.
We fertigate. You fertigate.
Yes.
So they're getting nutrients.
Yes.
So it has nothing to do with necessarily nutrients.
No, it's the actual.
You don't think it's the root binding? Do you think it's where the roots could actually where they bind?
I really don't know, because even if I use pumice that has fines in it, like just fines from the pumice.
Yeah.
We get nice sifted pumice at the conservatory. The fines don't help. It's still the same
it's something
effect.
with cation
There's
exchange
something
between the different particles.
Something like that.
Yeah. Interesting.
Basically, the best thing I've found to grow my plants in is what I like to say dirty pumice. It's just pumice with something else, a little bit of something else thrown in there. And things do great.
Yeah.
For things that need a bit more water, that other thing could be, some organics.
Yeah.
Right? Some coconut coir, even some, nice topsoil.
Just
potentially.
something.
Just something.
Something
just
to bind
something
it.
else.
Yeah.
And then for my rare things, I like to use a lot of decomposed granite, nice stuff without the binding agent.
Decompose with the pumice?
Yeah.
And that works as well.
That works great.
So it's not even necessarily an organic.
No,
it's just something
else.
That's weird.
Yeah. Even
and you
like
tried the same type of plant.
Yeah, even like crushed limestone.
Oh, that's weird.
Yeah. It's just pure pumice for some reason. I find my plants need way more water when they're in pure pumice.
Yeah.
But that doesn't entirely make sense because
it should be the sort of a portion of how much they need.
Yeah. But they're in pure pumice versus pumice that has a little bit of decomposed granite or a little bit of lime. They need way more water. They don't grow as fast. They don't produce nice root systems. All these different things. The only exception is for plants that are already really large.
And then they're okay.
And I think it's just because they're big enough that they...
What about the fine roots? Maybe it's the fine roots.
Maybe the fine roots just can't.
Because if you have a larger plant, larger root system, less fine roots.
But they still need the fine roots.
They still need the fine roots.
I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know.
Like in my big planter beds, I have pure pumice.
Yes.
And that works great. Anything else in there, I find you go deeper in the planter bed, the soil becomes like concrete if you add decomposed granite or lime to the pumice, even if it's in really tiny proportions.
Okay.
And then in the planter beds, if you add organics, you also will often get rot. So in the planter beds, things do fine in pure pumice. But then again,
space-wise, it's got to be
huge.
Yeah,
it's like
gotta be
being
space.
in the ground.
Exactly.
They can just expand their roots out. In a pot, small confined area, you need something else.
Interesting. Huh.
But it doesn't have to be much of something.
Yeah, just like dirty pumice.
Dirty pumice.
Yeah, dirty pumice. I forgot where I was going with this. Oh, I know. The shirt. The answer is pumice. Can we still have that? I mean, is that the answer is pumice?
The answer is pumice with something else.
That doesn't sound as good as the answer is pumice.
Well, pumice is still awesome.
Okay. We could still do the shirt. The answer is pumice. Okay, good. Okay, interesting. Well, I guess that's what keeps you growing succulents. Is I probably would just be like, well, why is this stupid plant growing not? Oh, that makes no sense. I'm just going to go do something else. Okay, so one more question is, once the columnar cacti are gone through this winter outside, in our garden. What is the watering regime starting in spring?
I'll have to see.
How will you know?
I'll just
It's a
judge
sense,
it. It's
right?
a sense.
It's a sense.
It's how thin the columnar cacti start to get, how little, how much they shrink, how
And-
much they're growing.
Okay, so when you say shrink, I'm sure everyone's picturing a columnar cacti, and you know the pinch points. The pinch points are just areas of pure stress where water, right? I always joke, I'm like, right here is where like they broke up with their boyfriend, they had no money, and like for us, that's gray hair and wrinkles. But for cacti, it's that pinch point where you see it. But you're not even going to allow that because that's extreme stress. You're
Yeah.
just going to see if they're not.
You can see the actual ribs, contract.
Yes. Okay.
So I'll just watch it throughout the beginning of summer. And if I
Okay.
start to see them get really water stressed,
Yeah.
I'll give them water.
You will give them water.
Yeah.
Because as you said, they're from monsoon, so they get summer rains.
Yeah.
Because a lot of, I don't really want to start this, but like your South African succulents, when they're in their dry season, they
the dry
shrink
season
up.
is
Yeah, but they shrink up and they look like crap. And you're like, oh,
Yeah.
that's how they're supposed to look.
yeah, they just drop all their leaves and look like that.
So you don't, I'm thinking like lithops, they
Oh,
just
yeah.
start shriveling up. So you don't want the columnar to go that way at all.
No,
No. Okay. All right.
that's not really healthy. For
So
them.
you're going to give them a little bit of water just
Yeah.
based on how their ridges look, how their epidermis looks.
Yeah.
If it's wrinkly, give them a little bit of water.
The idea is that
Mhm.
eventually they'll be big enough and established enough that they won't need any additional irrigation.
Okay. Do you think the Phoenix Botanic Garden, are they irrigating? Do you think they're irrigating their cacti right now in 117? Or do you think at this point they're just like, we irrigate it, they've lost all their, I mean, is that, I don't know what they're
It
doing.
depends. So my guess, if I was them, I wouldn't be irrigating
Yeah.
at those types of
Uh-huh.
temperatures unless it dropped.
Yeah.
Then I would give them some water because
Okay.
irrigation, if they don't have any roots
Yeah.
in this intense
It's not-
heat, it can actually cause them to rot.
That's what I was
Yeah.
thinking. Yeah.
I've had that problem where I'm like, oh, I'm gonna water on my regular schedule. It's so hot.
Yeah.
You think you might want to water them to cool them off.
Yeah.
It-
No.
They actually boil. Like I've had plants in
Jesus.
pots where it's so hot and you decide to water them. And when they were dry, they were fine because there's
Yeah. it's
air
less
doesn't
wa-
have enough of a heat exchange capacity to actually like damage the roots
Okay.
too much. You water it, all of a sudden that pot's saturated.
Yeah.
That same heat is there and the same source of heat. The pot actually boils and it like boils your
Jesus.
plant.
Yeah.
Um
Yeah. I'm guessing they're not watering.
yeah.
I'm
But what I would do
guessing-
is I would put misters up to try to cool it down.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh, that's interesting. Oh, that
If
goes
I wanna
against
do that,
everything I would
what I would
think.
do is-
Constant misters though during the day.
Yeah. Oh, I'd do it at night
Oh, jeez.
because I would
Okay.
want to
Get that 20-degree difference.
temperature drop for them to actually take up moisture.
And the moisture at night won't cause problems, you don't think?
Mm-mm.
No.
Ambient humidity won't do anything
Dang.
to in that type of condition.
Yeah.
No.
Okay.
Ambient humidity is only a problem if it's really, really humid.
Yeah.
Arizona's
Dry. It would probably
Like,
just evaporate.
It'll just
before it even-
evaporate right away.
So you would recommend doing that just to get that 20-degree difference down so they could actually
To get their
photosynthesize.
stomatas actually to open.
Oh my God.
Yeah. I would
Wow.
spray misters if you could, even with cold water.
Okay. Well, now
Well,
you're
you
just
know.
getting obscene with
Yeah,
your
but-
cost, but
I
Uh,
would mist them to get their stomatas to open. Their stomatas would open if there's enough of a temperature drop at
I
night.
wonder if they are. This makes me want to contact them and see
And then
what
you
they're
could water
doing.
them and then they could actually take up the water.
Wow. I wonder what they're doing. I mean, I just saw the cloth over and that's all they said was, you
Yeah.
know, this is brutal. Yeah. Because who would have thought that the cactus would just start
Collapsing.
collapsing?
Yep.
That's insane. I mean, that just goes to show you how awful those temperatures are.
Yeah.
And anyone who lives there, I mean, I say that living in the Central Valley, and people are probably like, why do you live in the Central Valley? But dang.
Yeah. It is interesting though, because there's a lot of like the temperatures around Areocarpus.
Uh-huh.
Areocarpus is a type of lithophytic rock
Yeah.
cactus that grows in Big Bend, at least Areocarpus ischiatus.
Yeah.
I've heard from several people that apparently the rocks around Ariocarpus
Yeah.
during the day
Yeah.
can reach upward of like 350
Holy
degrees.
crap. But it has that intense, it's buried, most of it's under the soil.
Yes. But
So
still,
that's
it
why
means the surface temperature is that
the
hot.
surface temperature, but it's most of it's probably the storage and everything is underground.
Yeah.
So that's gotta, and it's adapted to those
Yes.
temperatures. These cacti are not adapted to that. And I guess what's strange is, you think, oh, it gets this hot, but it's just that hot for that long.
That heat isn't a problem. It's the not getting cold at night.
It's not getting cold at
That's
night.
the real problem.
Got it. Okay.
The heat is not the problem.
Interesting.
It's that they're literally not able to take up water.
Okay, they need to pay people to go and just put fans by them at night and cool them down. I mean, for the really large ones, they should just do that. Like, I mean, come on. That's what you're known for, Phoenix. Do it. Okay, well, this is good. Thank you for coming on.
Welcome.
You didn't really have a choice.
Yeah.
I still want you on to talk about Socotra, and I definitely need to have you on to talk about Welwitschia, because I think people will just go crazy over that. We just got to find a time, which we will. We'll talk about Welwitschia. I mean, it is sort of like a niche plant, but man, when I said we have all these seedlings and that we'll trade for them, I didn't mean we'll trade like random people. I meant with universities, but I mean, I got people who are like, I have a baby, I'll trade you for one. Just kidding, just kidding.
That seems like a fair trade to me.
I have a husband, I have a wife. I'm like, do you have a house on Tahoe? With a dock. Maybe for that. I'll trade one seedling of Welwitschia for that. I'll be good. Okay, well, I'll have you on again. This is interesting, especially now, just bringing that in with the Arizona. So everyone, remember, if you have any questions, just email me at marlenetheplantlady@gmail.com. Follow on Facebook and Instagram, Marlene the Plant Lady. Gianluca, what is your Instagram?
My Instagram is marinsect_Gianluca. Yeah. MARINSECT_Gianluca, which is GIANLUCA.
Yeah. There you go. You don't post tons.
No, I hardly ever post.
I know. That's good. I respect that. Yeah. But
if you have questions, I'll usually respond to Instagram questions. People.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Not, do you have a Welwitschia I could have if they're listening to it? And remember, rate and review and share this. When I say rate and review, it means like 5 stars, right? Yeah. Don't tell me like, well, we don't. Anyways, until next time, everyone, happy gardening.